The rain tapped gently against the windows of Madison's small bookstore. She moved quietly between the shelves, organizing novels and straightening displays. The soft yellow light from the old lamps created a warm glow throughout the shop. This was her favorite time of day, when the last customer had left and she could work in peaceful silence. Madison had owned Chapter and Verse for 3 years now. The bookstore sat on a quiet corner of Maple Street, surrounded by other small businesses that closed early. She loved the solitude of her evening routine. There was something magical about being surrounded by thousands of stories while the world outside grew dark and still. As she reached for a book on the highest shelf, Madison noticed someone standing outside her window. A tall man with dark hair was looking in, his hands pressed against the glass. She couldn't see his face clearly through the rain-streaked window, but something about his posture seemed lonely, almost desperate. She glanced at the clock. It was past closing time, but the man looked like he needed help. Madison walked to the door and turned the lock, opening it just a crack. "We're closed," she said gently, "but if you need directions or something, I can help." The man stepped into the light and Madison's breath caught in her throat. He was impossibly handsome, with pale skin and eyes so dark they seemed to hold depths she could fall into. But there was something else about him, something that made her heart race for reasons she couldn't explain. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice soft and careful. I saw the books. I haven't seen this many books in a long time." There was an old-fashioned quality to the way he spoke, as if English wasn't quite his first language, or as if he came from a different time altogether. Madison found herself opening the door wider. "Are you a reader?" she asked. "I was once," he smiled, but it was sad. "My name is Alexander." "Madison." She stepped back, inviting him in. "Come in out of the rain. I was just finishing up, but you can look around if you'd like." Alexander entered slowly, as if he was unsure whether he belonged there. He kept his distance from Madison, she noticed, always staying at least an arm's length away. As he moved through the store, his fingers hovered over the book spines but never quite touched them. "Poetry," he murmured, stopping at one section. "I used to love poetry." Madison watched him carefully. There was something unusual about Alexander, something she couldn't put her finger on. The way he moved was too graceful, too quiet, and despite the cold rain outside, she couldn't feel any warmth coming from him. "What kind of poetry?" she asked, joining him by the shelves but maintaining the distance he seemed to prefer. "The old romantics," he said. "Byron, Shelley, Keats. Love that burns and consumes and destroys." The way he said it made Madison shiver. She pulled a slim volume from the shelf and held it out to him. "This is a beautiful collection of Keats. First edition reprint." Alexander stared at the book in her outstretched hand, but he didn't take it. Instead, he stepped back slightly, his jaw tightening. "I can't," he whispered. "Can't what?" "I can't touch it. I can't touch anything." Madison lowered the book, confusion clouding her features. "What do you mean?" Alexander turned away from her, running his hands through his dark hair. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain against the windows. "This was a mistake," he said finally. "I shouldn't have come in." "Wait." Madison's voice stopped him as he headed toward the door. "Whatever it is, you don't have to leave. I don't understand what you mean about not being able to touch things, but maybe I can help." Alexander laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You can't help me, Madison." "No one can. Try me." He turned back to face her, and in the lamplight she could see pain etched deep in his features. "What would you say if I told you I was dangerous? That everything I touch withers and dies?" Madison considered this seriously. "I'd say that sounds like a very lonely way to live." Something in her tone seemed to break through Alexander's walls. He sank into one of the reading chairs by the window, careful not to let his skin touch the fabric. "It is lonely," he admitted. "More lonely than you could possibly imagine." Madison moved to the chair across from him, settling in carefully. "How long have you been like this?" 200 years, give or take a few decades." The words hung in the air between them. Madison should have laughed, should have thought he was crazy. Instead, she found herself believing him. Everything about Alexander supported his impossible claim. His old-fashioned speech, his ethereal beauty, the coldness that seemed to emanate from him. "You're a vampire," she said quietly. He nodded. "And not the romantic kind from your novels." "I'm cursed, Madison. Everything I touch dies. Plants, animals, people. Even objects decay faster in my presence." Madison looked around her bookstore at the books that were her life, her passion. Is that why you can't touch the books? The paper would crumble. The ink would fade. I learned long ago to keep my distance from beautiful things. His eyes met hers across the small space between them. From everything I might want to cherish. The weight of his words settled over them both. Madison understood now why he kept his distance, why he seemed to exist on the edge of everything, never quite part of the world around him. That's why you were standing outside, she said. You wanted to come in, but you were afraid of what might happen. I've been walking past your store for months, Alexander confessed, watching you through the windows. You look so peaceful here, so content with your books and your quiet life. I envied that contentment. Madison felt her heart ache for this beautiful, cursed man. What changed? Why did you come in tonight? Alexander was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I'm falling in love with you. And I know I can never have you. The confession hung between them like a bridge neither could cross. Madison felt tears prick her eyes, not from fear but from the sheer tragedy of their situation. Alexander, she began, but he held up a hand to stop her. Don't, he said. Don't say anything kind. It will only make this harder. But Madison had never been one to back down from a challenge, and she wasn't about to start now. She stood up slowly, moving to the bookshelf where she'd tried to hand him the Keats collection. She opened it carefully and began to read aloud. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases. It will never pass into nothingness. Alexander closed his eyes, listening to her voice carry the familiar words through the quiet store. But we'll keep a bower quiet for us, Madison continued, and a sleep full of sweet dreams and health, and quiet breathing. When she finished the passage, she closed the book and looked at Alexander. Just because you can't touch something doesn't mean you can't experience its beauty. Alexander opened his eyes and she could see wonder there, mixed with the ever-present pain. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe love doesn't always have to be about touching. Maybe it can be about sharing the same space, breathing the same air, finding ways to be close without being close. Madison moved her chair slightly nearer to his, still maintaining the safe distance between them. I could read to you, she offered. Every evening after the store closes, we could share the stories, the poetry, the beautiful words. Madison, you don't understand what you're offering. A relationship with me would mean adapting, she interrupted. Finding new ways to show affection. Learning to love with our eyes, our words, our presence instead of our hands. Alexander stared at her as if she were an impossible dream. You would want that? A love you could never fully consummate, never being able to hold hands, to embrace, to... I would want you, Madison said simply. However I could have you. The rain outside had softened to a gentle whisper against the windows. In the warm light of the bookstore, surrounded by thousands of love stories, Madison and Alexander sat facing each other across an unbridgeable distance that somehow felt smaller than it had moments before. I could bring you flowers, Alexander said slowly, as if testing the idea. Leave them outside your door where they'd be safe from me. I could save you the last cup of coffee every morning, Madison replied. Set it where you could see it, smell it, know it was meant for you. I could write you letters. Long, beautiful letters telling you everything I wish I could say while touching your face. I could read to you every night, build you a library of our favorite moments, stored in words instead of touches. Alexander leaned forward slightly, careful not to reach for her. It wouldn't be easy. The best love stories never are. As the clock chimed midnight, Alexander stood slowly. I should go. But Madison, may I come back tomorrow night? Madison smiled, the first truly bright smile she'd felt in months. I'll be here. I'll have a new book picked out. Alexander paused at the door, looking back at her one more time. Thank you, he said, for seeing something worth saving in a monster. You're not a monster, Alexander. You're just a man who's been alone too long. After he left, Madison remained in her chair by the window, watching his silhouette disappear into the night. Tomorrow, she would rearrange the furniture to create the perfect distance between them. She would choose books that spoke of longing and hope and love that transcends physical boundaries. For the first time in 200 years, Alexander walked through the rain with something he'd thought he'd lost forever. Hope. Behind him, the bookstore glowed warmly in the darkness, And in that glow was a woman who had looked at his curse and seen not an ending, but a beginning. Their love story would be different from any other ever written. But then again, the most beautiful stories always were.